don't have to give you the caveat that we know that Mubarak was a dictator. We know that Mubarak was terrible. We know that Mubarak robbed money. We know that it was a dictatorship. We all know that. The question is, what's going to follow him? That's the only question. It's not that he was a bad guy. Who was he controlling is the question. You'll soon find out. And you'll soon find out in the Savage Nation who is behind it all. Let's begin with something I saw last night when I got off the air and I started to read and read and read and dig and dig and dig. I kept saying to myself, where was the Egyptian military when this first started? Why was there no immediate military presence to control the riots? And guess what I found out? Egypt's high command was in Washington, D.C. for a prearranged meeting with the United States military under the direction of Barack Obama, Commander-in-Chief. In other words, the forces in the U.S. government who orchestrated this entire collapse of Egypt planned it so that the Egyptian high command would not be present in Egypt when they triggered the events to go off. That's fact number one, and it's a very important one that shouldn't be overlooked. But let me give you a summary of a few other important points as I present my case for the prosecution that it was Obama and his internationalist socialists who were behind the riots going on in Egypt, Tunisia, and, of course, the entire Arab world, which is now unraveling. Do you know a group named the ICC, the International Crisis Group? Who are they? Well, let me tell you who they are. Mohamed El Baradei, who is being held up as the man who's going to save Egypt, right? And the man that the government media complex is pushing as the next president of Egypt, Baradei sits on the board of a group called the International Crisis Group, along with the following people. George Soros is the chairman of the Open Society Institute. Sandy Berger, remember him? He's the chairman of the Albright Stonebridge Group, LLC. He's a former U.S. National Security Advisor who was caught smuggling documents out of the National Archives. Who else is on the list? Javier Solana, former EU High Representative for the Common Foreign and Security Policy, lifetime socialist, a friend of Fidel Castro. He was once named as a subversive by the U.S. government because of his known association with individuals such as Castro. In addition to them, Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, is on the group of the ICC, the International Crisis Group. They have handpicked al-Baradei to take over in Egypt. But here comes the last one. Here comes the kicker. One of the senior advisors to this group is Brzezinski, former U.S. National Security Advisor to President Carter, a hater of Jews, in my opinion, a hater of Israel. Brzezinski is the same man who supervised the downfall of the Shah of Iran in 1979 and gave us under Carter the virus of radical Islam. And so this is some of the evidence I have, which has permitted me to draw the conclusion that this was not a spontaneous uprising of the kids in dungarees with blackberries, but this has been carefully planned. There is other evidence that I'm going to put before you here on the Savage Nation. Here it is. Here we go. I'm on michaelsavage.com. From WorldNet Daily, Obama pals provoked Egypt chaos. Now you say, well, what does that mean? How do I know who they are? What do you mean provoked it? How do you know that? Aaron Klein wrote this, and here it comes. Months before protests erupted throughout Egypt aimed at toppling Mubarak, Obama's own associates provoked anti-regime chaos on the streets of the now-embattled Middle East country and longtime U.S. ally. I'll let you read the whole story yourself. He names names. You're going to see their names. You're going to see who they are. The protests were led by former Weather Underground terrorists William Ayers and Bernardine Dorn, close Obama associates for years. Another protest leader was Jody Evans, co-founder of Code Pink, a far-left anti-Israel activist organization founded in 2002 to protest America's war in Iraq. This group previously met with Hamas and leaders of the Taliban. Evans was a fundraiser and financial bundler for Obama's presidential campaign. There are many other names. There are names that you have to read. You have to put two and two together. Now, I realize that you're going to get overloaded, if not already. I realize you don't want to hear anymore because you don't know what to do. I accept all of that. But I must, in good conscience, give you all of these disclosures. In addition to showing you the connections between Brzezinski, the former National Security Advisor for Jimmy Carter, who orchestrated the downfall of the Shah of Iran in 1979, there is the devil incarnate himself, in my opinion, George Soros, Sandy Berger, the disgraced former U.S. National Security Advisor, Javier Solana, the man who bombed Serbia into the Stone Age, and Wesley Clark, the disgraced former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, all members of the International Crisis Group, the ICC, who have been pushing El Baradei to take over Egypt for reasons only they could understand. In April of 2009, the Egyptian daily newspaper Al-Masri Al-Yum reported that U.S. President Obama met with members of Egypt's Islamist opposition movement, the Muslim Brotherhood. Let me repeat that. The United States President secretly met in April of 2009 with the Muslim Brotherhood. Earlier in that year, the newspaper reported that Obama met the group's members who reside in the U.S. and Europe and in Washington, D.C. This is all coming out now from Egyptian sources in the United States of America. Again, I'm going back to the main point. I am acting as witness for the prosecution. It is my allegation that Obama and Brzezinski and Berger and Solana and Clark are the people who orchestrated this entire collapse of the Middle East. And for reasons that I will explain to you, I do not believe it's because they wanted a radical Islam to arise. I believe that they are so idiotic. I believe they are so incapable of understanding their own philosophy. I believe that they're so blind to their own lack of knowledge of their acts that they don't even understand what would happen, and they did not intend this to happen. They probably just wanted Mubarak to move aside and for a sort of new parliamentary system to emerge in Egypt, one that would be more in line with their vision for international socialism. Let's not forget that Mubarak is a socialist himself. They probably figured there'd be a more benign kind of socialism, one that would be more in order and more in keeping with the European Union. And so they figured they could topple him without causing any riots. They did not understand the domino effect. They did not understand that Tunisia engulfed, Egypt in flames, Jordan teetering, the Arab world unraveling, whether it be Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Syria, or Jordan, or Tunisia itself. There is going to be a price to be paid that the West will pay very dearly. It is all because we have an inexperienced, utopian idealist, communist in the White House, surrounded by failed politicians. That is my allegation.